I've gotten reports from students who took the April LSAT earlier today that something fundamentally different was going on in the logical reasoning section of the test. Students have been telling me that it was harder, that it was different, that specifically there were more questions involving formal logic, numbers versus percentages, more conditional language. I'm here to tell you, don't worry, this is nothing new. If your logical reasoning section was noticeably different from what you've seen on your LSAT practice tests, most likely what you were seeing here was the unscored experimental section. LSAT appears to be gearing up to make some subtle, nuanced changes to the logical reasoning section later this year after they remove the logic games section. For those who aren't aware, of course, LSAT is removing the logic games section after the June test and replacing it with a second scored logical reasoning section. And what we've been seeing over the past several LSAT administrations is that LSAT appears to be testing out logical reasoning sections containing a different proportion of question types than what we've seen over the past couple of decades. In other words, LSAT may be looking to test the concepts that were on logic games in the logical reasoning section, but this is the unscored experimental section where they are figuring this out. So most likely your LSAT logical reasoning sections that were different are the unscored ones, and the more conventional ones are the regular scored ones. So to be clear here, LSAT is not going to add some new bizarre question type to the logical reasoning section. In fact, they have denied publicly that they are making any changes to the LSAT logical reasoning section at all. However, countless reports from students taking the LSAT in November, January, February, and now April as well tell quite a different story, that there are more subtle, nuanced changes coming up in logical reasoning later this year. In other words, we're going to see an increase in the relative proportion of logical reasoning questions testing mathematical style reasoning. So you want to brush up on your understanding of numbers versus percentages, absolute versus relative values, and questions involving formal logic like inference, sufficient assumption, and parallel. Questions involving lots of conditionals as well. So when I say inference here, I mean questions involving must be true, most supported, questions that may involve fact sets rather than arguments. Now, what do I mean by numbers versus percentages? For example, if I were to tell you that 100% of the people named Steve in my household love the LSAT, that's a large percentage, but still a very small number of people. In fact, I'm the only person in my household named Steve. That is not the name of my wife, of course. She is sick of hearing me talk about the LSAT, so 100% could be a large percentage, but still a very small number. In contrast, if we were to say only about 2.5% of people living in the US live in New York City specifically, 2.5% is, of course, a very small percentage, but of course, that would still be over 8 million people, which is still a lot of people. So if you're taking the LSAT in April or June and you see logical reasoning sections that appear radically different from what you've seen on your practice tests, don't worry, this is most likely the extra unscored experimental section rather than the one that counts. However, if you're taking the LSAT in August or September or beyond, you will likely want to brush up on these logical reasoning questions. Again, there are plenty like these in the old practice tests, but they will appear likely in increasing proportion on the LSAT starting in August. And of course, if you'd like my help with the LSAT whenever you're taking it, feel free to check out the link below the video to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.